How's it going, everyone? I'm Keegs, and I know I'm a little late on this one, but I still really wanted to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. I loved this movie, long story short, and I thought it was a great way to tie in all the previous films, not just the MCU films, but all the other Spider-Man films from Toby McGuire to Andrew Garfield now to Tom Holland. And yeah, so I just really enjoyed it, and there was a lot of nostalgia, and I can really appreciate that. I will say though, if you don't remember the previous movies very well, or you never saw them at all, then it might be a good idea to go and maybe marathon those before you walk into this one, because I think a lot of the intended jokes and just intended weight of certain situations might be lost on you if you can't remember it and feel that little bit of nostalgia in there. But not to say you can't see it without the other movies, but I think it really adds to the experience if you do remember the other movies. I feel like this movie was clearly made by fans of Spider-Man that wanted to do him justice. But I want to get into some spoilers now because I loved this movie and I just really want to talk about it in some further detail. Starting off, I really didn't know what to expect from this movie. I had tried to avoid spoilers kind of at all costs, so I went in with very little information. Based on the title, I thought it was going to be Tom Holland getting sucked into some parallel universe or different universes, and he's kind of jumping through different universes on his way back home, but that's not at all how it is. It's actually the opposite. Other universes keep coming to him in the MCU universe, and he's trying to send them home. The concept was really fun, and interestingly enough, there were actually no new villains in this movie. Every single villain in this movie was taken from a previous Spider-Man movie, which I thought was really cool and really well done the way they did it. And speaking of that, though, all the villains themselves, they come to Tom Holland's universe just as they're about to die, and I kind of wondered why. I feel like we didn't get any reasoning as to why did it pick them at that specific time. Maybe that's exactly when they learned that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. That's the only thing I can think. Because otherwise, why didn't it pull, Doc Otto when he was still a good guy and he was working with Peter Parker because he knew him previously. So maybe they just had to connect that Peter Parker was Spider-Man by that time. Not sure. I didn't get great clarification on that one. Andrew Garfield and Toby McGuire were fantastic in this movie, and I really love them in their respective roles. And from here on out, I'm just going to say the actor's name because they're all Peter and it would get really confusing otherwise, but essentially they were really good, and they came in slightly after all of their respective trilogies had ended, or respective movies had ended. I guess Garfield only had 2 movies, but it ended right after, so they're a little bit older, a little bit more mature than they were in their movies, which I really liked because it showed they had some new perspective and insights on the world. And like Andrew Garfield is still kind of dealing with some PTSD about losing Gwen. He's got really low self-esteem, and he's kind of like the midlife crisis Spider-Man. And Tobey Maguire is now older and wiser, but he seems to have regrets, I feel like. And it's really proven in the fact that he says that he's been working on a cure for Norman, who in his world has died long ago. But the fact that he's constantly working on that cure makes me think that he regrets not saving Norman at that time. And I also thought it was a fantastic way to come up with a cure for him so fast, is because it wasn't fast. Tobey Maguire has been working on this for years now, and he finally kind of has the serum, but obviously Norman was dead at that point. So I think that shows that he regrets not trying to save Norman and maybe some more people, Sandman and things like that. But I think that just really tied it in pretty well and showed that he has evolved as a Spider-Man even past his movies. I was also shocked but happily surprised that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire had pretty big roles. I thought they were just going to be cameos that just kind of stop by and say, oh, look, remember that thing? Okay, Tom Holland, moving on. But that's not at all how it was. They had very big roles, very impactful situations, which I really appreciated. When they were all working together, like in the lab and kind of the last fight scene at the end, they actually merged all of their theme songs together and kind of cycled through them and integrated them together, which I didn't pick up on first, but it's actually amazing. And super well done. And then all their interactions between each other were great, and they're comparing battle stories, which is fun. And Andrew Garfield's like, well, I never fought an alien or anything of that nature. You guys are so much cooler, which was really funny. But then they're all kind of talking about Toby McGuire and how he has all natural web shooters and he doesn't have to actually build them. And I thought those kind of interactions made it very personable, and you could really feel that they were super interested in each other and each other's lives. Also, when Toby McGuire caught the glider that Tom Holland was trying to stab into the Green Goblin, he didn't even say any words, but his look to Tom Holland was just so powerful, and he didn't need to say anything because he just needed Tom Holland to take a second to think about what he was doing, slightly calm down, and understand what Toby McGuire was saying was, obviously, this isn't the way, you're not going to feel better. And I think that was a really important moment for Tom Holland, and a really great save by Toby McGuire. The villains did a great job, and oh my god, Willem Defoe, to me, he was a standout, I thought. He did a fantastic job. You could clearly see his posture shift and his dynamic change when he went from Norman to Green Goblin and back. He was clearly the main villain in this, and I heard that he didn't want to come back unless he had a major role, and they gave him one, and a very impactful one, and he just crushed it. So I was so happy to see that. And I think he was actually a little bit meaner, or scarier, I should say, in this one. I feel like he just had a little something extra crazy about him in this one. Like he was already, I guess he was already past the point of having much Norman left in him by the time he was sucked into this universe anyway. So it was really cool to see that this is a man that was completely took over by the Green Goblin by this point. Jamie Foxx as Electro, fantastic again. I really liked it, and they really kind of retconned his character because he was way more menacing here too, and he seemed a little bit smarter and a little bit angrier, and I think they made him just generally cooler. He, although, was the one person I think that at the end they saved, but I don't think he changed. Everybody else, like, minds was altered back to the way they were, and they weren't bad people anymore, but all they did was take Electro's powers away, which I feel like doesn't really change him mentally. He's just less capable of, like, wreaking havoc, I think. Doc Otto was also one that I was so happy to see come back to the light side because he's such a tragic character. And I feel like anybody that remembers Spider-Man 2, how he was a good man and a great scientist, it was so hard to watch him turn evil slowly and just that thing completely start to take over his mind. I've also got a bit of a soft spot for him because I loved him in the Spider-Man PS4 game. And that was another time that it was kind of hard to watch him turn to the evil side, even though I guess in that game he was kind of evil through the whole way, but no, we won't talk about that. Overall, I think they did a great job of making sure that Tom Holland was the main character. You kind of get nervous sometimes when you have so many famous people in a movie that none of them are going to get enough screen time, but I don't think anybody got gypped out of any screen time. I think all the Spider-Mans got a very respectable amount of on-screen time, and same with most of the villains. The only two were the Lizard and Sandman, who were almost background villains in this, but they had some good parts about them. I do think the reasoning for Peter messing with the spell and kind of throwing this whole world into chaos was a little on the weak side. I mean, he should have, taken MJ and get her memory good to go, and then everything else, don't worry about it. He can re-explain that to everybody else. It's not that big a deal. I think MJ was the biggest deal to not have her memory. So a little bit weak, and I didn't love the college stuff, though I understand it was there because it was kind of the catalyst for him to have to go and find Strange and try and make everybody forget. But I thought they spent a little bit too much time there, but it definitely didn't detract from the movie. Doctor Strange actually was not in the movie as much as I thought he was going to be based on the limited knowledge I had going in here, because he's kind of the new Tony Stark who everybody goes to with all their problems, and that's how they're kind of setting him up. But he didn't really come back until the very end, and that whole fight scene in the mirror dimension was really fun, and I loved how Peter essentially outsmarted Strange in there and left him there. I really hope that if he had not come back in a few days, that Peter would have gone to Wong and said, like, hey, maybe we got to go to the mirror dimension because I left Strange completely bound in that dimension. So I'm glad he was able to get out on his own, though. They made Aunt May out to be the Uncle Ben character of the MCU. And of course, she had the famous line, with great power comes great responsibility. I did think her reasoning for wanting to save the villains was a little weird. I mean, sure, at the beginning, when you're like, okay, well, we don't have to press the button just yet, we can try and do something, then sure, no problem. But as soon as they escaped, you should have immediately pressed the button. I don't understand why you wouldn't have. He should have immediately called MJ up and said, okay, they escaped, it's time to press the button and go back to normal. Because who knows how many people they were going to kill in their little rampage and little hissy fit, just going around town and everything. And you want to save these 6 arguably terrible humans because their lives are more important than all the innocent people in the rest of that apartment complex? Like, I don't understand that reasoning at all. I also really figured that May was dead when the glider hit her. I thought she was cut in half, to be honest with you. I mean, we all remember, or at least most of us remember, the first movie when it impaled Norman, and it seemed to do a pretty easy job of that. So I am impressed that May even stood up at all after that. I also wanted to briefly mention that I loved seeing Charlie Cox come back as Daredevil, or I should say he came back as Matt Murdock, the lawyer, and he did a great job, and it really makes me miss that series, and I really want some more Daredevil. This movie is clearly setting up a fresh start for Peter, and I think this is kind of pushing him to a more focused story for his next movie, and gonna have few, if any, Avengers crossovers, because nobody knows who he is now, which does kind of bring up the question for me. I don't understand exactly how the spell worked. Wouldn't he still be in all the computer systems and like still have his high school diploma? And just because they don't remember who he is doesn't mean he was never there, does it? I didn't understand exactly where that line was, because I mean, it didn't erase computer systems, I don't think, with his name in it. It just, people forgot who he was, I guess. I mean, but it really felt like at the end that he had never existed. And so anyway, I don't know. But to me, I didn't quite understand that at the end. I wonder if Ned and MJ are going to get their memories back. I could see MJ not getting her memories back, actually, and only Ned. I mean, I think Ned needs his memory back because he needs his sidekick, you know? He needs that person in the background kind of supporting him, so I see that being the case, but I would be interested in seeing Peter kind of move on maybe to a new romantic interest like Black Cat or someone. I think that could be a super fun dynamic and a really fun story to play with. So, I mean, we'll see. Zendaya, I'm sure if she wants to be back, then he will remember her in the next movie. But if she wants to step down and kind of focus on some of her other work, because she's in so many movies these days, then I could see Peter getting a new love interest, actually. The last thing I want to mention is the symbiote in the mid-credits scene at the end there. I had a couple of questions, but one of them I actually did get answered right before I filmed this video, and I guess Venom, the symbiote, is part of like a larger collective consciousness from his previous movie that he was telling to Eddie. I'm pretty sure that Eddie is his name. But anyway, he was telling Eddie that he's part of this larger consciousness and they're essentially as old as time. And that's how he knows Peter Parker, because he knew the Venom in Toby McGuire's universe, which I thought was a really cool way to connect that and kind of show that before things started diverging or whatever, all the symbiotes, you know, have a collective consciousness that they can traverse the multiverse in and have essentially knowledge of like everything, which seems like it would make him a lot smarter than he actually is. But I guess, you know, information does not make you smart. I should know. Also, the other thing I was wondering was, why did that little piece of symbiote not go back to its home world at the end when Doctor Strange sent everybody back to its home world? I mean, the rest of the symbiote and Eddie went back, but that little piece didn't. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that the spell was reliant on the target sending back to its home world be a whole target, right? Like, if you cut his hand off, was the hand gonna stay? I don't know. It seemed a little odd, maybe because it's a symbiote and they're kind of special or something. I don't know. Overall, though, I thought this movie was absolutely kick-ass, and I loved seeing all three Spider-Man live action together. And there were so many heartfelt moments. There were so many sad moments in this movie, but really, it was so well done. The one that got me was when Andrew Garfield ended up saving MJ, essentially redeeming himself from how he lost Gwen. And if that didn't hit you in the emotional gut, then I don't think anything will. But let me know, what do you think of this movie, and where do you think it sets up Peter for his next solo movie? I'm Keegs. Have a great day.